This video is by Straight Goods News. SGNews.ca.
You know, we're going by the National Defense Act, which clearly says that the CSE has no authority to do any surveillance and intercept communications on Canadians, whether they're inside or outside the country. So the allegation seems to be that there's a directive that talks about data, and the data is what we're talking about here, collecting data on who's talking to who. The PRISM program seems to be a part of that, and I don't think it's clear to me that the minister wasn't really referring to that when he said it, when he answered the last question. I don't think he's being totally forthcoming here. We haven't seen the directives that were issued. We do know that the directives were, that this process, whatever was going on, was stopped in 2008 due to concerns about proper authority. And they were reinstated again in November of 2011, according to the Globe and Mail story. I haven't seen the documents, but it's all the minister has said basically is that we think we're following the law, and that's all he said. He's not provided any information. He's not given us a copy of the directive, and it's not clear to us at all that there's no access to the information gathered by PRISM. This is the question in the UK, that the American program collects the information, and apparently, at least according to the UK, shares that information. When specifically asked if Canadians have access to that information, he went back to his old original talking point, saying that we're not allowed to collect information on Canadians. CSE doesn't collect information on Canadians. So I don't think he's been totally forthcoming in terms of what the information is being collected, what data that the government of Canada has access to.
So you don't believe him? So you don't believe him when he says that the SEC respects its mandate and doesn't spy on Canadians or people in Canada? You don't believe
the information? The question is, what data do they have access to, and do they intercepting communications is one thing. The content of the communications. What we've got going on here is some talk about data or metadata, which is information about who's talking to who. Now, they may have a legal interpretation that says that that's not covered by the Act. But what we've got here is the minister actually being very, very specific about what he's saying here, so we didn't violate the Act. He's not answering the question. The question is, do they have access to the PRISM data? Are they getting information on Canadians that they think is outside of the Act? He's not being clear about that. We should have access to the directive. There was something going on clearly between 2008 and 2011 because they stopped the activity that was being undertaken in 2008. You know, we have to know whether or not the law is being followed. If it wasn't being followed prior to 2008, we should know about that. If his directive is some sort of end run, as Mr. Justice Gonthier talked about, is this an end run on the CSE Act, on the National Defense Act? We don't know. We'd have to have access to the directive that was given to CSE by the minister. The point here is this: you know, when Canadians are being snooped on or their information is being spied on, this is done through the courts, through a court order, not done by ministerial directive. So the question here is whether or not they've discovered or they've come up with a new idea that they can do an end run on that or not through a ministerial directive. I think Canadians have a right to know. We want to know that information. We understand the British government is making information available to their parliament. We obviously want to follow up on that and see what's going on there. But so far, I don't think the minister has been clear at all as to whether or not we have access to the same kind of information.